This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. How many of us at some point in time have heard the term needle in a haystack? Now, for those of you that have never been around a haystack, it's quite dense. It's overwhelming when you begin to look at it from the perspective of trying to find something as tiny as a needle. But let's take that idea and expand it out a little bit. Let's think about an island that we've heard about all of our lives. It's 118 miles long, and at its greatest north-south width, I guess we could say, 23 miles. And that comes up to just over 1,700 square miles. That's a big number. That's a very big number. I'm sorry. I forgot. We also have to add another island. An island that, in addition to the one I just previously mentioned, this island is 32 miles in length. And they sit on the edge of one of the largest bodies of water in the world, the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to discuss today the identification, after all of these years, of Karen Vergata, otherwise known as Jane Doe No. 7. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. We've talked a lot about everything that's happened with Gilgo Beach. Okay, let's discuss Karen Vergata.
Fire Island Jane Doe was identified as 34-year-old Karen Vergata, who actually was last seen on Valentine's Day in 1996. Her legs found April 20th of 96, and her skull found in 2010, 14 years later. This story, Joe, I do not see that we're at the ending. We're talking about people that were murdered. We're talking about women that were murdered, and one man, and trying to find the perp. Who did this? And are we looking for more than one? I mean, right now, we've got one man, and reality here, 3 women identified as his victims. And of course, the possible 4th. And now we have the identification of yet another possible victim, Fire Island Jane Doe.
It's important. I think that this is how it fits, for me at least, because it comes down from a forensic standpoint to dismemberment. And my gosh, how many times have we talked about dismemberment on Body Bags? But in this case in particular, it's that the horrible nature of Karen's case, and also the idea that looking back through time, this stepped off in 1996. Man, I was still, working in Atlanta as a death investigator. Matter of fact, that's the year that the Olympics rolled into town. In Atlanta, 1996. That's when they actually found, down in Fire Island, a couple was walking along the shore, and this is not on the ocean side of the island, just so everyone understands that. It's on the bay side, so it's more of a protected area. They were, walking along. Can you imagine? And they see a partially open plastic bag, and contained within that bag are a couple of legs. Couple of human legs, and I can only imagine their shock, at that discovery. But part of what you do when you're you're trying to understand a case is kind of the geography, the lay of the land. That's why it's so important, because there's been a lot of mention. I mean, we're not going to ignore the elephant in the room here. All right. There's been a lot of mention about connectivity between all of these cases relative to, the so-called Gilgo 4 now. And you have to, I think any right thinking person would have to sit here and try to see if there's any kind of connectivity. But when you start to talk about this 32 mile long fire island, that it's not part of Long Island. It's not like you can hop in your car and drive along the shore and there's some big causeway that's going to take you over the fire. It's not the way it works. You have to go up and inland and back around and then back down. But here's the thing, Dave, that back in 1996, when that couple was walking along, their pathway there, and they look down and they see this partially open bag, and it's in water. It's in a watery environment, and there's what appears to be human legs sticking out. That's connected in time. You have to go all the way back. To 1996, and you wind up connecting a skull that's found in 2010 along Ocean Parkway. And it's not too far away from Gilgo Beach, a skull. And these two things are connected.
The area where her skull, where Fire Island Jane Doe's legs were found and the skull found on Gilgo Beach, was it found in the same area as the Gilgo Beach 4? Or was it found, because I know the Gilgo Beach 4 were 4 women who were actually found or actually recovered in a very similar manner with the gunny sack, and their bodies were similar so that they could be tied together based on the MO. But the other bodies, and we're talking about 6 other people here. We're talking about 6 other people. So we got 4 women, a toddler, and 1 man dressed as a woman. And they were not in the same way treated as the Gilgo 4, correct?
Correct. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And the skull of Karen that was recovered was actually recovered not too far away from those areas of deposition, but the skull itself was in kind of briars and brambles at another location called Tobay Beach, which is kind of adjacent to Gilgo Beach. It gets kind of complicated because you've got...
Okay, this is where it comes into being 4 miles. Tobay Beach is 4 miles from the site of the Gilgo Beach 4 area.
Yeah, you're right. And it is some distance in the sense of you and I were out walking, gee whiz, we got to walk 4 miles. But look, man, when you're talking about the depositing of human remains, and specifically women, that all seem to have this kind of commonality, you begin to think, you're putting together in your mind, what do these things have in common? Well, we got female remains. We've got kind of an area that would lend itself to a protected area from view in order to facilitate this. And then not just the Gilgo 4, but in another area, we've also got more dismembered remains that had been found. And so you're looking at a pattern that's kind of developing, and that's something that I'm very interested in exploring in this case. And the biggest thing for me, if we just look at Karen's case, the biggest thing for me is this. Why? Why is it, and I got to ask this, why is it that you would choose, if you're the perpetrator, to bag up, and it takes time, after you have done a dismemberment, to bag up legs, Okay. Drive all of this distance to this location, assuming that the perpetrator in Karen's case was not domiciled around Fire Island, driving all the way out there, searching out a location that's not on the beach, but inland, okay, on the bayside, and put it in that body of water. And then many, many years later, you find her skull, which is essentially on another island away from that. And why is there this delay? And why was the skull not found in a protected state? And why is it found on what, seemingly I'm sure that it's gone through the rising and falling of waters and all those sorts of things, but they're describing the area where her skull was recovered as being found in briars and brambles. So that tells me that it's a deposition of a human skull in a completely different type of environment, certainly topographically, from where the legs are found.
Is it possible that the killer was in a boat and threw the legs in the bag over the side of the boat and they just washed up on the shore, and that he's traveling down the coast with the head and just decides, I'm going to chunk this thing out? Is that possible, that he's just tossing stuff and arbitrarily landed in an area where a serial killer had also picked a place to bury bodies or to get rid of bodies?
Yeah, I'm sure it's possible. And it's also possible.
How likely?
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's also possible that lightning can strike and people can win the lottery.
This is crazy, Joe. We've got legs on Fire Island in 96 and a skull found in and around Gilgo Beach in 2010, when, by the way, there's also an area where 2 other bodies were discovered that had been dismembered. That's also, generally speaking, geographically in the same area, within a 30 or 45-minute drive. And those parts of bodies also appearing in the same general vicinity as Fire Island Jane Doe. I mean, we've got bodies that are dismembered. We've got bodies that aren't dismembered. We've got a toddler and a mother that we know are connected, and we got a dude dressed like a woman. Are these the victims of one serial killer, Joe? Or is there some kind of a club going on that is built on terrorizing people?
Or is it one person?
Doing it all?
Yeah, doing it all, and has a taste for it and is growing in their expertise. When you're talking about dismemberment, and these cases of dismemberment, you have to think back. Were they occurring? Is there any chronological tiebacks to when the dismembered remains are found as opposed to the intact remains are found? And how long had those intact remains been found when compared to those that have been dismembered? Do you have an individual that is mixing things up, if you will, as to their form and function? Maybe they didn't have enough time with the individuals that they wrapped up and deposited somewhere, as opposed to with the dismembered remains, they had much more time in order to facilitate this. And here's another kind of very ominous thing. We've got a lot of shoreline here. We've got a lot of this Bay Area in and of itself. And I beg anybody that's not familiar with this area just to take a look, the bird's eye view, go to one of the maps functions on your computer and take a look at all the little inlets, these little cozy coves that are through there. You have these little islands of grass that occupy these spaces out there. Access and opportunity. You mentioned boat. Did this individual have a boat that they were depositing these bodies in? Maybe so. Okay. But if they have a boat, were they trailering the boat, or did they have a place where they put in with their boat? Was there a common boat ramp anywhere? And, you think about the case up in Fire Island with Karen, was, and yeah, it's in a watery environment. Did the individual put in at a location up there and have her body in the boat and decided to disperse the remains? Because, yeah, we've got a skull that's later found in 10 at Toby Island. And then we've got these legs that were found back in 96. We're still missing arms. We're still missing the torso. Where is it? Was it scattered along the way? My thought relative to this, particularly when it comes to dismemberment, the one forensic tieback that we can look at all of these cases on, and I mean all of them, man, is that, and I've said this before, is there any evidence of tool marks, specific tool marks that are used to dismember all of these individuals? What kind of tool mark? If you're talking about somebody that's a hunter, there are handheld bone saws that are out there. I see them all the time, where people can field dress a deer with. Is that the type of saw that's being used to take the body apart? Is it a power saw? Because if it's power saw, it changes your dynamic unless it's an electric saw. Well, I don't know how popular electric saws were and how robust they were back in 1996. I know certainly they are now. Is that something that would have been used? Because if you use a power-driven saw, like with electricity, that's going to limit your ability to facilitate it, as opposed to something that's gas-driven, like a chainsaw. Well, if it's a chainsaw, those marks on these bones are going to be very, very distinctive. And I think finally, kind of as we kind of shut this down, because there's going to be more to come, Dave. There is. The one thing I would really be curious about, particularly as it comes to skulls, because in forensics and death investigation, skulls are significant in the sense that when people attack individuals, the skull symbolizes something, the head symbolizes something. First off, it is a point of attack where if you're going to do great bodily harm to someone, you would take a headshot or you would hit them in the head with something. It's the center of all that we do as humans, because our brain is contained in there. And to that point, some people view the head as being a very powerful element of the body. I think that somebody that's particularly fixated on things like this might see the head as something of a trophy, just like we do with deer. Here's the question. And given the amount of time between when Karen's legs were found back in 96 and when her skull was discovered, had that skull always been out there? Or had it been something that was retained for a number of years? And in forensics, that's something that we can kind of figure out, because a bone that's left to be out in the elements begins to take on the nature of the environment in which it's found. However, if an individual has taken a skull and they put value to that skull, for instance, maybe they strip it of all of its tissue. There will be tool marks relative to that, little dings, little cuts on the surface of the skull as tissue is peeled away. And then did it sit in a box somewhere on somebody's shelf where people would go back periodically, a person perhaps, and hold it and fantasize about it? And then finally they got tired of it and they went to a location and tossed it, maybe back in 2010, and now it's just being discovered. Or has that skull been sitting there since 1996? I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.